I tell people all the time, when you're dealing with salespeople, managers, whatever, you have two buckets you have to operate with. You have accountability, you have culture, and they have to be equally full.
Today, I'm joined by Josh Potts, CEO of Mac Haik Automotive Group. At 17, Josh was living out of his car with no clear path forward. Today, he's the CEO of one of Texas's most respected dealer groups. And his journey was fueled by one hard-earned truth: you don't know what you don't know. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: CDK Global, Authenticom, and CDG Recruiting. And now, let's get into the show.
I just wanted to be out there, and the more that I started to look up things and get things, this is where I started to see, some of these things start to pop up. And it was really funny because I asked our CFO, our old CFO, his name's Jeff. I was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this before?" And he said, "Yeah, I get their emails every week, and so does Terry." And I'm like, the same Terry that said we don't listen to anyone from the outside, So it was pretty funny. He just asked me if I listen to y'all's podcasts, and I was telling him, as a company, we've just always had like anti-outsider persona, and we don't listen and talk to anybody. At least that's the way we're always told. And then the minute my boss leaves and I get his gig, I find out he's been reading y'all's stuff for like years.
Let's go, baby. We broke the barrier. So I think it's interesting because growing up in the business, I felt like it was tough for me to get really authentic sources of information. Meaning, you're in your local market, your dealer down the street does not want to help you. And that's who is proximate to you, right? That's who you have access to in many cases. Of course, 20 groups, solve that to be in a big way, but things go beyond 20 groups, right? 20 groups is sometimes heavy on benchmarking. Also, you can only get so detailed with one person, in a meeting. So I think that the point you're making here is interesting because in a way that for many people in the industry, that has been the philosophy, right? Kind of do your own thing. And I think it's interesting to hear you say that your group is sort of breaking that barrier and embracing outside ideas at the minimum to improve your operation.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I would steal anything from anybody. I mean, I'm not a criminal by any means, but the being involved in 20 groups, I think one of the things that I learned immediately is that there's so many people out there in this business that have, either declared, I guess, their own, company or dealership's victory over different little pieces of the business. And everybody's got something. Everybody knows something you don't know. Everybody has a hidden talent, something they specialize in. And I tell you, man, I've been blown away by some of the people that I've met and that I know. And when I think about everything that I've taken back to my store and put in play, and I think it's a big part of how we grew Mac Haik Chevy into being one of the biggest dealerships in the world.
Incredible. Well, we had a non-traditional start, which I love, by the way. Keep it interesting. You're on a roll, and I just pressed record, and here we are. So that was fun. But officially welcome you to the pod, Josh Potts on the CDG podcast. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you clean up nicely, man, and not just your physical clothes. We're referring to your bio, which I thought was very informative. You sent it over very professionally. Kind of gave me the full lowdown on you. I was able to, maneuver the questions just a little bit to make it, appeal to you even a little bit more. But it seems like you've had an incredible career in a relatively short amount of time for the car business, which is, I believe you became GM, just about 8 years ago, the youngest GM in your group. And I don't know if this was after we scheduled this podcast or before, but you were just promoted to CEO. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. We were in the middle of working on a pretty big project. I didn't have a bio just laying around, just so you know. That'd be a little weird, right? So we had
not in my world, frankly, not in my world, because I get asked for one pretty often. But I can understand how for a dealer, yes, that would be. It's not common. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, I mean, unless I'm looking for a job, right? I didn't have a bio just laying around, but we actually were in the middle of a project. We were pursuing another dealership, and I can't really dive too much into that particular deal yet, but that bio was relative to that particular process. And what's interesting about it is when we started that project. So I've been the GM of Mac Haik Chevy since 2017. So you're right, 8 years, 8.5 years, whatever it is. And I became a platform manager, platform GM for our company about 3 years ago, maybe 3.5, but in that range. And my boss, our old CEO, he was kind of getting me ready for that point, for whenever he decided to retire. And when we entered into that process, I had to make the bio because I'd never had one before for that particular project. And what was interesting is from the time we started the project to the time that we finished the project, I had to remake it 3 times and make myself the CEO because I wasn't when it started.
Well, we'll dig into that. I mean, if I had to guess, and you could just, smirk, nod, shake your head, but you are likely in the process of getting approved by a new manufacturer, and maybe it's a German manufacturer, or maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I see you have lots of domestics under the group. You have some Japanese as well. So you got those existing relationships. So am I directionally correct, or am I completely off base?
We'll say we'll say that we are in the process of bringing a new acquisition or a new facility to the table. But I would say that it's more directionally in the realm of what we are known for.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you've done some good work. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where, how does a 33-year-old become the youngest GM in his group to CEO 8 years later? We'll unpack this, play by play. But just who are you? Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I've worked at a car dealership since my 18th birthday, and if I had to give you a background without digging into it too much, um, you know, I had a pretty wild, childhood. I found myself in a situation when I was 17 that I was homeless, and I had a car that I bought myself, and I lived in that car. And my wife today, Brittany, her parents found out that I lived in a car, and they said, "Hey, we'll let you stay with us, but you got to get a job, and you got to go to school, and you got to make good choices, and you have to stay upstairs, and you can never come down after 9 p.m." And so
And that put you in place.
that put me in place. I joke about this a lot, and it's pretty funny. It has nothing to do with my life, but just for whatever it's worth. One time and only one time, my wife snuck upstairs after 9 p.m. I turned around. I'm like, "What are you doing up here?" And she's like, "Hey," and she goes, "Shh." And I'm like, "No." I said, "I will tell on you because I'm not sleeping outside again." So I sent her on her
Oh
way.
man,
And
when you get a taste of something like that, you don't want to go back.
yeah, yeah, no, I didn't want to do it. But, so I was one of those people that ended up in the car business because I really I had to have enough money to pay for school. I mean, that's really all it was about. And set up my college schedule where I only went to school Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I pretty much worked bell to bell every other day. I'm never going to be the type to sit and say I was like some 30 car salesperson. My claim to fame as a young person was I was a decent salesperson, mid upper teens type of deal. But my claim to fame was finance. I had that natural knack. I could look at a deal and I could make it happen. And I mean, from 18 years old, I was snatching credit bureaus off of the printer and handing it to the manager and say, "Send this to XYZ." And they were looking at me like I was crazy. And our finance director kind of picked up on that deal, and he was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna give you a shot. I got something for you." And this was shortly after I turned 19. So I was a finance manager when I was 19, and sales manager by the time I was 21. And everywhere I went, my claim to fame, as we'll say, is that I took everything that I hated about the business, that, the way managers treated us, or general managers or whatever. I took all those things, and every time I found something that I thought sucked about the business, I flipped it. And I said, well, we're not going to do that anymore. So one of the first big, moves that I made was I worked at a dealership that was really known for, we would spot deliver everybody. And we would have to drag all these customers back and re-sign them, or, we would get a deal in finance and then it would take 2 hours to get it done. Customers are waiting. They're frustrated. Salesman thought he made money. Next thing you know, he gets a commission. It's a mini, or he doesn't make what he thought. So the first thing I did was I said, hey, we're taking everything over at the desk. And, when I became a sales manager, we started submitting everything from the desk, and we started finding that, and I'm not dissing finance departments, but we used to make jokes back then. We called them the DPC, which is the Deal Prevention Center, and it was all predicated on the fact that they operated with a mentality that if a deal didn't align in a way that they loved it, they didn't want that deal to happen, or they manipulated it in a way that it would. And by doing that, we took off, man. We started making every deal possible. And volume wise, what I became known for was everywhere I went, I could move the needle. And what that turned into was, why do we have to be so hard? You should push salespeople and you should motivate salespeople, but we don't have to treat them like crap. And I can tell you, as a salesperson, when I was young, I was treated like crap.
What does that mean? Like, what is to you? What's the definition of being treated like crap as a salesperson?
I mean, you bring a pencil to the desk, and you're a young kid. I'm a young, I was a young guy, and it didn't matter if you were young or older or whatever, but we bring a deal up there and we got an offer from our customer. Manager gets it and he's like, what the, is this? And he's like, man, he's like, you're a weak, this is a offer, and
Hmm.
and they're all of a sudden, they're grabbing a floor manager and they're sending them out to talk to your customer. And managers didn't want to talk to customers. They would do everything in their power to never talk to a customer. It was always the floor managers, and they would take half of your deal, half of your commission, whatever. And, they, would do things like, I'll give you a quick one here. Like when I first started, this is my first day in the car business, by the way. The guy they introduced me to, they're like, hey, this guy's gonna be your floor manager. And he walks me over to his desk and he pulls out his check stub and he says, hey, you see this check stub? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you want to make that kind of money, boy? And I'm like, yes, sir. And
Hmm.
he said, here's what I want you to do. He said, you go stand your skinny butt, on the corner out there. And he said, don't come inside until you have a customer. And I said, okay. And I said, how do I know how much the cars are? He said, you don't. And I said, what if the customer asks? He said, you don't tell them. I said, what if they get upset and leave? He said, then you're fired. He said, it's that simple. He said, so don't be stupid. Don't be a pussy. Go stand outside and don't come back until you get a customer. And it was things like that, but people couldn't leave early to go see a kid's game, or, man, it was just really like, hey, how do we turn this experience around, So, instead of using floor managers, we said we're going to train salesmen. We're going to train them from scratch. And every time they need help, we're going to get up off the desk and go talk to the customer. And we're going to greet customers and we're going to sit out there and work with them and help them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because when you told me that, that floor manager would take half your deal, F&I manager tells you, this is trash, get out of here. It's on one hand, I understand, they could, they could explain it in a more normal way. On the other hand, I wonder, are they just in cahoots, or is it just a way the dealership's incentivized that just doesn't make sense? I don't know. It just got me thinking, like, for a young person that needs that training, or is that just the price of being young and inexperienced, that you got to give up half your deals half the time,
Yeah, I think the businesses came a long way. I don't know many places that do it like that anymore. But for me, from that to even customers, it was just everything I ever did was just about like, hey, this piece of the business is stupid. Like, why are we doing that? Like, I won't name names, but you know, I started at, when I first moved to Texas, I started a dealership, pretty big dealership, and, you know, we moved the needle big time. I mean, big time. They were averaging about 130 used cars a month. And within 8 months of starting there, we were selling over 200. And they're like, dude, we got to move you to new cars. Can you do that in new cars? Yeah, I can do that in new cars. So I get over there in new cars, and, one of the first things is like the finance department, the director is like greeting us and saying, hey, how did you get to this deal? And you're like, what do you mean? It's a done deal. It's approved, already submitted it, already handled everything. Yeah. No one's allowed to talk to banks but finance. And I'm like, well, that don't work with me, dude. I'm going to do what I want to do. And, and then it was like all deals have to be worked at 8%. And I'm like, regardless of what the customer qualifies for, it's got to be worked at 8%. And it's like we want to treat customers like they're stupid or something, and if someone has good credit, they're not falling for that.
This episode is brought to you by the new CDK Simple Pay. It's the only payment solution that's built into CDK for unrivaled reliability, financial efficiency, and compliance. Whether it's text to pay, contactless payments, remote payments, Apple and Google Pay, or just a tap of a credit card, CDK Simple Pay makes it easy for customers while increasing your accounting team's efficiency by an average of 10%. And because it's CDK, setup and onboarding is fast with hardware that's ready to go. So you can learn more at cdk.com/simplepay or click the link in the show notes below. What years were these? When you say this is when you started in the business, what years are we talking about here?
So I started in 2001, and this would be 2010. 2010. And then, do a really, really, really great job at this store, just putting deals together, talking to customers, being really active, being a happy sales manager, taking great care of salespeople. And when I left that dealership, in Houston, left there in 2013, went to a different dealership. On the day that I left there, and I'm not going to say it was just me, I'm not going to take credit for all of it, but on the day I left there, 38 people quit. And
Wow.
And it was all predicated on the fact that we had built this beautiful, synergy and family type vibe. And everyone knew, like, hey, you could count on Josh. That guy loves you. He takes care of you. He's going to talk to your customer. I hold people accountable. Like, I can be tough, but at the same time, I tell people all the time when you're dealing with salespeople, managers, whatever, you have two buckets you have to operate with. You have accountability, you have culture, and they have to be equally full. And if they're not, you have too much accountability, not enough culture. You have an environment where everyone feels like they're just getting beat down all the time. And vice versa, you have too much culture, not enough accountability. You have a country club. And everyone's coming and going when they want to, doing what they want to do. There's nothing holding it all together. You have to have a perfect synergy between those two buckets. You have to equally pay attention and pour into both to get the best results out of a sales team, out of a management staff at any car dealership.
What's your way of doing that? Like, what's your leadership style when it comes to that? I understand the balance you're referring to, right?
My style's pretty easy. I mean, it's kind of weird, if you ask me, I would tell you I'm a pretty hard guy to work for. But if you ask my people, they would tell you I'm a great guy to work for. And, how do I do that is I put intentionality behind them both. First and foremost, not to be cliche, but, there's a saying, I think it's Zig Ziglar, that says that, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And the care has to be real, right? And I don't mean just care about your people. I'm talking about care about customers. I'm talking about caring about the success, caring about the things you say, caring about the process that you ask them to put in, caring about the things that you want them to do, and then actually doing them yourself. So my leadership style is I only care about the day that we're operationally living in today. That's it. Don't care about yesterday. Don't care about tomorrow. Only care about today. That's it. And what I do is I build a system of accountability metrics that are predicated upon what you're going to do today and today only. And I act like today is either the end of the world or the best day ever. But the point is that I break every goal we do. I don't care about the week. I don't care about the month. I want to win the day. And I believe that if you operate as if you have to win the day more than everybody else, you'll win more weeks, you'll win more months.
Do you think that's dangerous though, Josh? Do you think that's dangerous in sense of falling into like myopic thinking, right? Do you end up pressuring that customer to the point where it doesn't leave a good taste in their mouth? Or like, do you think this leads to, just bad behavior if you're thinking just about today?
No, no. And you have to have your standards. Like, what is it that you're willing to stand for? Right. And when I say I break everything down by the day, it's like my people worked under the pressure that they had to sell a certain amount of cars a day. They had to touch a certain amount of people a day. They had to make a certain amount of phone calls a day. They had to make a certain amount of appointments a day. And everything was it's so funny. Everything had to happen. Technicians had to turn a certain amount of hours a day. Everybody had to do what they had to do every single day. But when they did those things, they were rewarded, they were praised, they were loved on. The culture piece of our puzzle is that I believe people are motivated three different ways, and only three ways. People are either motivated by time, recognition, or money. And I think that if you're a great business operator, a GM, or even in my current position, you want to be intentional about your focus on every one of those programs. You got to have programs that reward people monetarily, pay plans, bonuses, etc. If you want the best people and the best results, you have to pay them, and you have to pay them at the best possible scenarios that there is. You can't try to be cheap and then want the best. It doesn't make sense. And then the recognition piece, some people care about money, but man, they want to be praised. They want to be lifted up and loved in front of their peers. They want you to stand in front of a meeting and talk about them. They want you to use them as the example in the next presentation that you give. They want the next success story you share to be theirs. And then the last one, and I love this one, it's my favorite lever to pull, is time. Because time is the sneakiest reward that you can give people. And it's the one thing the car business has always been hesitant to give people. And you'll have people say, oh, if you sell a certain amount of cars, you can pick your own schedule. Tons of dealerships do that. We do that too, right? But being intentional about it means, creating programs where people never work their children's birthdays. It's creating programs where people never work their anniversary, where people never work their wife's birthday. It's creating an environment where, hey, if on the average, you're typically a pretty consistent employee and you want to be late every Saturday for 5 months to go to Timmy's games on Saturdays because you love your son and you want to be at his game or his daughter, your daughter or whatever, then you need to create an environment where they can do that. And the car business has always been hesitant to do that. They don't want to do that.
It's very true.
And the car business always feels like the only thing that you can take, the only lever you can pull to get more out of people is to take their life away. And I want to give it to them.
Wow. I mean, you're not wrong. Time is definitely a big one. I haven't heard that, what you just said there with, carving out specific dates in advance. How do you keep the business functioning, to its fullest while balancing, like you said, someone wanted to go to his son's, football game and every Sunday or Saturday or whatever it is, right? But how do you make it all work?
Poorly. It's not.
Well, I don't know about that, my friend. I mean, you had some tremendous success over here, growing from 215 million in sales to 502 million. And again, I know we're not talking about profits or anything, but you've experienced some serious growth. So I think something's working.
Our profit was up 300%. So just put that in there.
It's profit margin, that is.
Everything's in line. All the numbers are great. Everything was good. And that's why I said it's one of the greatest dealerships in the world. And I believe that. And most people know it is that. I said poorly because sometimes it was stressful. You know,
Uh-huh.
I never
It
forget.
has to be.
Yeah, I never forget. One time I walk into the sales tower and I look up and I have, so at the big store, the one that I was the GM of, we had four new car managers, right? And I walk in the sales tower and there's only two. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And my
It was Timmy A versus Timmy B playing football that exact Saturday. That's what happened.
Yeah, my GSM looked at me and he goes, well, it's so and so's birthday, so he's off today, and so is at the vacation that you approved. And he's like, so we're just going to roll shorthanded. And this was like, I'm telling you, dude, this was like a holiday weekend. It was like Black Friday.
Mm.
And I'm just like, you know, and he said, hey, he said, before you get too pissed off, he said, I also want you to know that 20% of the salespeople are out because this person has a birthday. This person has this person has their kids, doing whatever. And he said, and you approved all that too. And, you know,
This is the fear. This is the fear right now that you're tapping in with every dealer right now that's getting anxiety from hearing this, right? The understaffed Saturday is like the worst nightmare. But go ahead. So what did you do and what do you do in that situation?
so we just buckled up, man. You know,
Roll with the punches.
I told I grabbed all the salespeople. I pulled them up the tower and said, hey, man, you know, y'all know that we offer a lot of great recognition, a lot of programs, a lot of time off. And I said, man, today it bit us. We're really shorthanded. I said, so I need all you guys to buckle up and hang out a little longer today for me. I said, because one day it's going to be you and you're going to need your teammates to have your back as well. And I looked at my GSM and said, hey, dude, you need to get up on the tower and get to work. And I turned around and I went and stood on the tower and I got to work. I started greeting customers, turning them to salesmen, you know, and that wasn't my normal every day. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't. But in the circumstance, you know, like, why can't I sacrifice and why can't other people sacrifice for the sake of their teammates, knowing that it is going to come back? And eventually they're going to be in the same spot. And it's not fun to be shorthanded. And I've been shorthanded plenty of times, but I can tell you this, and my people would attest to it. I can remember tons of holiday weekends, last week of the year, Black Fridays, New Year's Eves, where I personally greeted every customer that pulled up on that property personally. I talked to them. I did the initial sales process that we have for our people. And when I turned them to a salesman, I said, hey, I've got this customer here. This is this, this is this, this is this, and this is this. I mean, they knew that I would walk it. I didn't just talk it. You know what I mean? And I think that that's an important piece of the
It's a
puzzle.
very important piece because you're leading by example. So what do you think? What do you think is the lesson here? Right? This has to. I mean, like you said, it's disruptive. There is a value to it, which is the culture that you're building. On one hand, you can look at it as an investment in your team and your people, longevity. On the other hand, you can look at it as an expense. You're likely losing sales or some margin on those understaffed days. Even if you're able to pull off the deals or same volume of deals, are you really able to optimize every single deal? Right? I mean, I would argue no, but again, could be viewed as an investment. What's your bottom line takeaway on this entire, just your perspective on operating and culture?
My perspective is that you can never lose. You know, if you lose a little bit of money, maybe on paper in that day or whatever, but you will never lose. There's two things in the car business you'll never lose on, and you can bank on it. You'll never lose on volume unless you're just terrible at selling cars. You'll never lose on volume. Volume always wins. Scale and volume always win. And the second thing is building incredible culture with your people. Because when you do, those people will build a loyal following of customers that will wait for them, that will not come because they're not there, that will sit on a bench. I've seen a customers wait for this one particular salesperson as long as 4 hours, and they will not take another person. They want their person. And those people will pay off for you in spades versus having an environment where, no one can ever be off on a Saturday. No one can ever leave early. Don't get me wrong. I mean, our schedule's tight. I mean, they have to work. They put in hours. I'm not going to say that we have this, you know, country club layaway schedule where they can kind of work when they want to, but your productivity determines what you ultimately do and get to do. And there's much more than what I even said, that we offer for them to get to do and take for themselves. So I think the takeaway is that you can't lose. You can't lose if you take care of the most important part of your business. No one will get on here and say that people aren't the number one driver of their business. No one will say it. So if people are the number one driver of your business, that should be what you invest in the most.
So what else are you doing for the people on your team that's different or very advantageous for your dealer group, right? Like what else can you tell us? Because that was very specific, just that example of like days off and specific, important life events. It's important, it's specific, and it's beneficial. What else do you do?
Just try to be intentional, it could be as simple as, so and so hasn't produced at the level that they typically produce, and you grab them and you sit down and ask them, are they okay? What's going on in your life? Get to know them a little bit. You don't have to be their friends, and obviously if you're a general manager of a car dealership or you're running a company, you can't go hang out with them on Saturday nights, but you can ask them, are you okay? How's your life? How's your family? Is anything going on? And you'd be surprised what they would tell you. So that's a big part of it. But the other part is just creating ways to bring everyone together and have fun, giving everyone a common goal, communicating what the goal is. For example, our goal was always, hey, how do we get to a point where we sell 1,000 cars? And we got there, and once we got to 1,000 cars, we rented out a suite at an Astros game, and everybody went to the suite and had a good time and brought their family. Sometimes if we're number one in the market, man, we'll tell everybody, hey, if we win by X or we win by this margin, man, we're going to go play paintball together, man. We'll go play paintball, and they'll all shoot me. They'll all shoot me. One time we separated the whole sales crew. We rented out an entire escape room complex. Okay. Mm-hmm. And after we closed on a Saturday night, we went and we all did the latest game possible. We divided everyone into teams that wanted to participate. And the group that escaped their escape room the fastest got 10 grand. And it was just fun. It was crazy. Everyone's knocking on the walls as they're going through, laughing, hugging, taking pictures. It's things like that.
This episode is brought to you by Authenticom. Dealer Vault connects over 12,500 dealerships across 100 plus DMS systems, offering both dealers and vendors secure, standardized, and compliant data. With Record Recharge, we validate and cleanse records daily so your team can make smarter, faster decisions. Trusted across the automotive industry, Authenticom keeps your data clean, connected, and ready for action. Your data, your way. Authenticom, the business behind the automotive business. Visit Authenticom.com or click the link in the show notes below. That's AUTHENTICOM.com or click the link in the show notes below. It seems like you have a very deep desire to create these like intimate connections with your surrounding environment, the people you're with, which is obviously it works really well in a business sense because it comes authentically to you, right? You want to become intimate with people that you spend lots of time with, but it's also good in a business setting because people people know you care about them and they're willing to work harder for you. That's at least how I interpret this. And my question to you is, do you think any part of that has to do with just your childhood? And as you mentioned earlier in the story, you had a pretty rough childhood, by, really any measure. I mean, that's not something that's easy to go through, and not many people go through that. And I'm just curious to know, like, what's driven this, because you're very passionate about it, and you really care about forging these deep, intimate relationships with your team. Do you think that has to do with just the way you're raised and maybe what you lacked? I'm going a little bit, on a fringe here, but I'm curious to know what's driven this type of personality.
I think honestly, just seeing things work. It was funny, like taking this, we'll tie this all back together. You remember at the beginning, I was talking about how learning from other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't always do all these things, like I started out with the simple things, like, a salesman comes to the desk, instead of calling him names and being a jerk about it, I'd go talk to his customer, take care of him, make phone calls with him, sit down, and I worked hard for them. I wanted them to know that I worked hard for their deal. I fought for them. But that was some of the easy stuff, but then
That was the obvious stuff to you. Like, I'm not going to treat you like shit. Doesn't make sense to me to operate like that. Easy. Done.
yeah. So like that was like your first piece, right? And then as time went on, what happened is, as you start to experience success, what happens? You start getting awards. You start going for example, I was a Chevy dealer. You start going to Chevy Dealer of the Year, or you become a general manager like I was, and you're in a 20 group. And the next thing you know, you're sitting with other people and you're like, hey, what do you do in this situation? Or what do you think about this? Or, hey, this is how I do this. And then whether it's your idea or someone else's idea, one day someone comes up and says, hey, man, I was thinking about what you talked about the last time we were together. So I went and I did this, and my people loved it. And this is what happened. And you're like, interesting. Okay. And then next thing you know, you're like, let me add a piece and see what happens, see what happens with my people. Right. And I remember going to a training conference with I'm not plugging my friend here, but a very good friend of mine. His name is Jonathan Dawson. He has training called Psychology.
Yeah.
And I go to his Pinnacle Center opening, and he has all these people that he loves, admires, respects in the business there. And I'm sitting here and I'm supposed to go on this stage. I'm mic'd up. I'm supposed to talk. And me and this group of people were in this back room, and we're having a similar conversation about this topic. And one guy spouts off, his name is Patrick Abad. He's at Beaver Toyota in Georgia. And he's like, we give all of our employees their birthdays off and their kids' birthdays and this and that. The same thing I do. So I heard it and I'm like, huh. And then another guy's like, man, we do this. And then another guy's like, we have this raffle that we do for our technicians at the end of the year. So I'm sitting here in the moment and I'm listening to all these people, and I take all this stuff and then I go back and I sit with the leadership of my dealership and I'm like, hey, these are some of the things. Which ones do you guys want to do first? And we added something, and we just watched what happened with our people, our average car sales. I mean, Mac Haik Chevy specifically has had a 10+% volume increase for 6 straight years. And we've just watched how, they say eagles, fly with eagles, right? Birds of a feather flock together. Well, what do really talented people do? They hang out with really talented people. What do people that really care do? They hang out with people that really care. What do people that are awesome on social media do? They hang out with other people that are awesome on social media. And so what happened is all of a sudden people started coming to us, and they would say, hey, man,
We're building a reputation.
yeah, they're like, hey, I hear this is the best place in Houston, Texas to work. And you're like, yeah, it is. And you're like, where are you coming from?
Damn right.
Where are you coming from? And they will be like, oh, I'm coming from here. And at Mac Haik Chevy, we have numerous number one Honda salesmen that now sell Chevys. We have a number one Hyundai salesman, a number one Mazda salesman, a number one Kia salesman, multiple number one Ford salesman, a number one Stellantis salesman. They all come there and they all can't be number one. And we're straight up with them about it. Hey, man, everybody can't be number one. And in all of these, I'm telling you, this is a solid crew of people, but they all come together and they're each, I'm not going to say one up in each other because that wouldn't be the right way to frame it. But they're all learning from each other and they're all pushing each other. And because you care and they care, everyone cares, everyone can see everyone cares. And it builds this energy and the energy is beautiful. And what it's turned into is a dealership that people actively say, dude, I want to work there. The Mac Haik Chevy story is amazing because that dealership sits on 11 acres. And for a dealership to sell 800 to 900 cars, a month consistently, we have no parking. We don't even have parking for our employees. We have nowhere to stick cars. Everyone comes there and they're like, how the hell do you do it, dude? And I'm like, we just operate with the mentality that we'll figure it out. And we always figure it out.
Where do you put the inventory, by the way? Just curious. Like, do you have like offsite lots or something, or?
It's in 4 different parking garages.
Yeah.
We have one next door, that we rent. We have one across the freeway that we rent.
Yeah.
We have down the street that we rent. And then we have a PDI center that our company utilizes that's about 2.5 miles away.
So tell me about, you've also piloted, I mean, you've won plenty of awards, right? Like 9 times Chevy Dealer of the Year, 2025 Chevy Evolve Dealer of the Year, GM Financial President's Club recipient. I mean, I could go on and on. You've done very well, and you've been recognized by the OEMs or certain OEMs for that. What was it like, piloting some of these programs? For example, Car Bravo, GM Energy. I read that, you did some of these pilots as well. Like, why you? How did that come to be with all these different programs?
Because I believe as a dealer, if you're going to be a dealer, there's enough dealers running around crying about the manufacturer, crying about the product, crying about incentive programs, crying about, and you can cry about it all you want, but that doesn't help them. And when a new program comes out, I'm just going to be honest, they always suck. I've never had a new program be delivered to me from the factory and I go, oh my God, this is amazing. We're going to make so much money. And then we actually make so much money. I've never had that happen. What typically happens is the factories like to pilot stuff and they'll do it typically at small stores, and they do it at small stores because they don't want to run into big problems. And they'll pilot these things at small stores. But the problem with small stores, I'm not disrespecting small stores. I have small stores. At small stores, you have small problems. And when something goes bad, it doesn't blow up in your face the way it does at a big place. When you have to sell, 30 cars a day to keep your machine rolling, and if a connection or incentive system or Lord help you if you can't RDR cars or whatever, if a system goes down, like it really messes you up. So what I try to do is say to myself, okay, there's all these people that cry, and I hear it all the time. I go to the 20 group, Chevy sucks, this brand sucks, that brand sucks, whatever. The factories have enough of those dudes, and they don't care. The factory doesn't need that. What they need is our help. They need us to tell them what the hell works, what the hell doesn't work, why it doesn't work. And instead of being mean to them about it and telling them why it sucks or whatever, we got to be like, hey, man, I will do it. I'll raise my hand. I'll do it. I'll be your guy. You can count on me. You can trust me. And I'll put my heart into it. Now, don't get me wrong. I've been mean to them before. I've had instances where, I'm not going to say it. But one program,
Say it.
I'm not going to say it. I gave them a lot of feedback for a year and 0 changes were made. So I was a little bit of a prick about it. And, I will say though, that when I was a prick about it, the final time, they did finally make some changes. And how they started to make the changes was they said, hey, if you're going to complain that much, you have to be on the advisory board. So I got on the advisory.
I'm not saying it's Car Bravo, but I'm also not saying it's Car Bravo. That's all. That's all.
I'm not saying it's Car Bravo either.
And that's not based on any feedback from other dealers. I'm just saying. I'm not saying it's Car Bravo.
I'm not saying it's Car Bravo either. I didn't say it. The, you know, Car Bravos came a long way. Came a long way. And it's, they fixed a lot of things. But my point is like, you know, you can be a voice of negativity or you can be a voice of positivity. You can be a voice of,
I understand,
of reasoning, or you can be a voice of complaint. So I got in these deals and I just said, hey, I'm going to be your guy. I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to be the person you can count on, the person you can support. And I'm going to tell you this emphatically for all the dealers out there that cry about how the factory sucks or doesn't help them, or the dealers that cry that the factory doesn't give them any inventory or any of this other stuff. I'm just going to say this. They're never going to, if that's all you're going to do. So I want to be the guy the factory counts on, the guy they love, the guy they call, the guy they need, the guy that helps them. I want to be an amazing partner, not just a dealer. I want to be a partner. I want to be their business partner. And I want them to know that I'm a dealer that they can count on for anything they need on the planet. Period. End of story. They need me to take cars. I'm going to take them. They need me to take EVs I don't want. I'm going to take them. I will do whatever they need me to do.
I mean, but to what extent though, Josh? Like, where do you draw the line, right? Because you said EV. I mean, what if they're just not moving in your store? Like, how many can you already take?
I'll figure it out. I mean, I'm just
there you go.
My mentality is.
I mean, listen, it sounds like a manufacturer's dream come true, right? You're proactive, you take initiative, you're providing feedback, and you're supportive even at your expense to a certain extent. I think that answers a big part of my question of why you're involved in so many of these programs.
I just want to be the guy the factory counts on.
Yeah, but I think there's another lesson in there, which is something I believe in. You know, they say like hang around the hoop, right? If you're in your case, you're hanging around the hoop here, right? You're close to the manufacturer and all these things. When the best opportunities arise as well, you're going to be first in line, right? And so you're putting your name, you're putting yourself in the overall, the discourse there, right? You're part of the equation, and everything they're trying out, you're part of that. And so naturally, right? It's why you get brought into these things, in my opinion.
But you can also be a part of the solution. I remember when GM had to roll out nationwide connected incentives, and it was rough. It was rough. And a lot of dealers were complaining about it. I'm not going to say it was perfect because it wasn't, and it still isn't. But we had already had it for a year, and we had already had it for a year, so I was already used to it. But everyone else had to get it by waking up one day and bang, now you're on this new program. And I don't want to be that way. I want to already have my arms around everything. By the time every other dealer is learning about a program, I want to have already mastered it. That's just the way that my brain works.
You know, it's very interesting how opinions on the dealer manufacturer relationship vary so widely by manufacturer and by dealer. I've had people on the podcast that say completely different things from what you right now, right? Like the manufacturer is not your friend, and you know, you got to be very, very careful and cautious. And it's just interesting that, you know, the spectrum of opinions is just so wide, and there's so many. And by the way, like, not to say that, you know, certain dealers that think that way are not successful. They are very successful. The question is, you know, what has it taken for them to get there? You know, what are the challenges they're dealing with? I don't know, but there's definitely a very wide spectrum of opinions on the relationship between the manufacturer and the dealer. And I would say you're on one extreme of that end.
I know tons of people that are very successful and complain about the manufacturer all the time. I'm not saying that that's a measure of success that you need. I'm just saying, for me personally, I want to be someone that the factory doesn't feel like they're fighting against. I want them to feel like I'm someone they can count on. At the end of the day, if we want to grow, right? If we want to grow and we want to get other stores, and we do, which one do I want to be known for? Do I want to be known as the guy that fights them every step of the way on everything that they try to do, or the guy that supports them and steps up when they need you? And and that's that has to mean something at the end of the day for how your relationship works with the manufacturer when, like you said, when opportunities come up. But even if opportunities don't come up, even if you're not trying to grow, would you rather be in a situation where you have to learn things on the fly or be part of pioneering them?
So Josh, tomorrow you walk into an underperforming store. What are you looking at the first day, the first week? What are you paying attention to?
If it's an underperforming store, the leader. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to say that none of the other people matter, because they do. I'm not going to say that facilities don't matter, because they do. I'm not going to say location, brands, geography, all those things matter, but it all starts with the person at the top. 100% of the time. They are the pace setter. They are the culture setter. They are the person that sets the expectations, communicates the dreams and goals. I'm starting with that person first.
And what type of questions are you asking them?
Well, I mean, ultimately, when you're trying to assess why someone is in the situation that they're in, you have to first understand what their expectations of what their store can be and can do. And you have to see if those expectations align with what yours are. My favorite questions that I think everyone should ask themselves every single month is, what am I doing well? What could I have done better? And what am I going to do about it? And I think that you should ask those three questions all the time. So I'm asking someone, hey, here's the store, here's the numbers, here's the reality, here's the situation. Talk to me. If money was no limits, if nothing was holding you down, if nothing was holding you back, if you were the king of the castle and you could make all the rules, what do you think you do well? Go.
I gotta ask you those questions, of course, right? It wouldn't make sense without it. So you tell us, right? What are you doing well? What do you think you could be doing better, and what are you doing about it?
In my current role, if you're walking in and saying, hey, in this role today, what do you do well? I think that I keep my mind and eyes open well. I pay attention. I listen. I talk to people. I seek advice and guidance from people. I ask people's opinions. I ask people in positions bigger than mine, people that are perceived to be smarter than me. I reach out to everyone and anyone I can, because I know that I don't know everything. And I think also culture is something that I do great. I make people feel loved. I recognize people. I create an energy where people want to work and they're happy to be there doing it. What can I do better? I think for me in this role, being that I've never been in it, I need to learn how to do this job better. And what I mean by that is that when you're the GM of a dealership, you have your business plan, your vision, your processes, everything you want to do. You know what that is, right? And you walk in the door and you say, this is my vision, this is my dream, this is my goal, this is our processes, this is how we're going to do it. And then
Well defined.
you're physically there and you
It's a
can put it
big.
in place, right? But in this role, you're not really there. And it isn't your vision. And you're almost naive to some extent to say, I can put my dream. We have 16 dealerships. I would be naive if I think I can put my dream in 16 people's hearts and minds and get them to live it out the way that I would live it out. So what's the answer? What am I going to do about it? What I'm trying to do about it is I'm trying to ask lots of questions. I'm trying to talk to a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people in a similar position that are successful to me. And I'm like, how do you do this gig? Like, what do you look for? What's your number one? If you were if you were walking in brand new today, knowing what you know now that you've had this job for 10 years, what would you do different? How would you attack it? And I'm trying to gather as much information as I can. I switched my 20 group over to a mega 20 group, so I could be a part of people that run groups, you know.
I got to add you to ours. We have a text group over here with, very, very high caliber people.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I heard about your podcast And our CFO, who retired just a few months ago, but he still works with our company, but he did retire, but he works on like you know, a day a week type of basis. One of the first things he told me was to sign up for your newsletter. And I said, why? And because I wasn't familiar with it, I'll be honest with you. I started out this podcast by saying, traditionally speaking, as a company, we've remained insulated. And I said, why? And he goes, man, I find their articles very interesting. He said, I think they have a lot of good stuff. I think they talk to a lot of great people. He said, I would sign up for that one if I was you. So I signed up for it. So just so you know, I did sign up for it.
Let's go, baby. It's another subscriber.
and, that's not a plug. That's real. He did tell me.
That's a freaking plug. Come on, give it to us.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. No, but that's the goal. That's honestly the goal, right? It's to be hyper relevant to the dealer community.
Yeah, but just ask questions, like keep your eyes open. Like I told you before, there's so many people that know so many things more than you do. There's a guy in the service side of our industry, which obviously sales is my strong suit, right? People's my strong suit in my mind, not service, right? I met I'm gonna plug this guy just because he's awesome too. I met Ed Roberts, who you probably know. I met Ed Roberts a few years ago, and I've always just kind of been enamored with what he does. And he's invited me to see his operation before, and I didn't take him up on it again. Going back to traditionally speaking, our company remains insulated. We don't seek outside help or influence, right? And one of the first things after I'd been in the gig for 6 or 7 weeks, I called Ed and said, hey man, does the offer still stand to come view your operations? And he said, absolutely. Come on. And I booked a plane. I'll be there next week, but I booked a plane and I'm going down there and I'm going to go see his deals. So I'm going to try to learn from everybody I can meet, because I know I don't know everything, and I don't. And I'm just going to be clear. The job I have, I don't even know how to do it. I don't,
I love it. This episode is brought to you by CDG Recruiting. Here's the truth. Top dealers don't leave talent to chance. That's why I built CDG Recruiting, the go-to talent partner for dealers who want the best. We're placing general managers, F&I talent, service directors, controllers, you name it. From the showroom to the C-suite, we work with dozens of the largest groups in the country. So if you're working with us, you're in good company. And because we've built the largest audience in automotive, backed by over 180,000 industry professionals across our media platforms, we know exactly where to find the people who can move the needle for your store. If you're ready to stop hiring like everyone else, go to cdgrecruiting.com to book a free call. Again, that's cdgrecruiting.com, or click the link in the show notes below.
That's what
I love it, because these are the type of people, right? You're like, that's the type of personality where, you figure it out. And I can see why you've had the trajectory of success you've had. I mean, your slope is very steep. And you've grown very quickly because you're going into things with an open mind, right? And you know that you don't know, right? That's what I think is so important, right? Just, as they say, you don't know what you don't know, right? So going in with an open mind, that's how you learn. Keep asking those questions.
If my boss was sitting here today, he would have a smile from here to here, because he told me, when I got my first GM gig, he drives me to the front door of Mac Haik Chevy, and he's dropping me off, okay? And he looked at me and he goes, hey man. And I'm like, yes. And he goes, you don't know what you don't know.
Let's go. Maybe I'm your boss. Just kidding. No disrespect.
And he said, trust me, you don't know a lot. He said, so I need you to pay attention and ask lots of questions. And he said, but don't ask too many, because then I'll think you're an idiot. And
then you get into analysis paralysis.
And I'm like, ask questions, but don't ask questions. But if I ask them, then I'm smart. But if I ask too many, I'm an idiot.
Oh, it's so good.
And he said, and lastly, don't screw my dealership up or I'll fire you. And I'm like, yes, sir, I'll go do it. And I get out there.
So good.
And this is kind of funny. This is sidebar. It has nothing to do with anything. After my first month at the dealership, I sucked so bad. We sucked so bad. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was of that opinion that the GM sits in like their ivory tower and they don't like do anything. So in my head, I'm like, I could be a GM because GMs don't do anything, right? And I do all kinds of things. So in my head, I'm like, I'm there. I'm way ahead of it, right? So here I am. I'm the GM for this big dealership. And in my first month, we sucked. I mean, we stunk. Worst job I've ever done in my life. And I'm sitting there and all of a sudden, all these people are coming to me. They want me to sign pay plans for service advisors. I don't even know what the hell service advisors get paid for parts people. All of a sudden, I'm looking at the service manager and I'm like, well, what do you normally pay them? And he's like, well, that's what we normally pay them. And I was like, that's what I thought. Sounds good. Like, and
Did a little reverse engineering there.
yeah. And I'm signing the deal and I'm getting these checks put in front of me and I have no idea what any of them mean. Right. And so they give you this,
My friend, that's called being street smart. That's called
Yeah.
being street smart.
so they give you this box. Okay. And our company policy is, I told you this had nothing to do with anything, but it is funny. So our company policy is that the GM has to sign every check. Okay. Because they want you to know where money's going and who it's going to, who you do business with, all the things, right? So they give me this big box. It's my first month. I've been there for 3 weeks and we're sucking. We're doing awful. People are asking me questions. I don't know the answers. They give me this big box. And I'm telling you, this box is like this and the stack of checks is like this. So I'm going and every check has stapled to it the backup from accounting of what the check's for. Right. So I go and I'm like flipping it page by page and I'm like going with a pen and I'm like checking off each thing and I'm putting a little highlighter dot beside it. Right. So after like 8 days of having this box of checks, the controller calls me and she goes, dude, what the hell are you doing with that box of checks? And I'm like, I'm checking them all. And she's like, are you stupid? And I'm like, no, what do you mean? And she's like, we check it. That's what we do.
That's my job.
She's like, we checked it for you, stupid. You need to just sign it. And I'm like, oh my God. And I had been stressed for 8 days checking with a highlighter every little box, right? So that night I'm sitting at my house.
And how old were you at the time?
I was, I'm 41. So 32, I guess, 32.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting on the back porch at my house, right? And I had lost almost 20 pounds. And I've got a little fluff here and there, but I'm a pretty fit guy, right? And I lost 20 pounds. And I looked like death. And I'm sitting on my back porch and my wife looks at me and she says, what's your problem? What's wrong with you? And I'm like, he told me I don't know what I don't know. And she's like, okay. And I said, I don't know anything.
Oh my God.
What to do? And so I pick up the phone. She said, why don't you just ask him for help? And I'm like, okay. So I pick up the phone and the financial statement's getting ready to come out. My first month. Okay. And I call him and I said, hey boss, listen, I said, I did a terrible job. It's embarrassing. And I said, and if I ever do this bad again, I said, I'm just going to fire myself. You don't have to call me, nothing. And he sits there for a second and he says, shut up. He goes, why did I hire you? And I'm like, because I can sell cars. And he said, exactly. He goes, just do that. He goes, whatever the hell you did in your career that every time you went somewhere, they sold way more cars. He said, just do that. He goes, and whatever crap you think a GM does that you
don't check every check.
he said, stop doing all of that crap immediately. And he said, I will teach you the rest. He goes, but for the love of God, nothing happens until you sell a car. He goes, just go sell cars. And
I gave me the chills, man. I swear to God. That's just like,
I said, okay.
You're a good storyteller. I'll give you that.
I went
That
up
was amazing.
there and I just sold cars and man, we took off like a rocket.
Incredible story, man. And a hell of a way to wrap up our pod, because that was just truly incredible journey. As we're closing up here, I mean, any closing thoughts? Anything I should have asked you that I did not, or any other remarks you want to make?
Yeah, the only remark that I would add, to this whole process and journey along the way is that I'm extremely grateful to be in the position that I'm in. I don't think I said that. I don't take it for granted. I'll never take it for granted. I've lived my entire life on a continuous improvement process, from trying to figure out how to sell cars better, do things better, take care of customers better, service customers better, answer phones better, whatever it is, be better. Eyes wide open, ask lots of questions, but remain grateful in the process. And so I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my boss for a long time. Terry Shields is an incredible human. He's an incredible person. He gets a little bit of a bad rap because he can kind of be a dick, but he is a good dude. I've seen him help people at the drop of a dime. I've seen him pay for funerals out of his pocket. I've seen him at restaurants in Christmas time hand all the waiters $100 bill just because it's Christmas and he knows they need the money. And I wouldn't be here without him. So I just wanted to say that.
Beautifully said. Josh Potts on the CDG podcast. Josh, thank you so much for coming on.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.